Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the superjersh Show. In this episode, we are going to review the new movie The Flash, which came out in June 2023. If you enjoy this podcast, you can watch it on youtube.com/superjersh. You can also listen to it on Spotify and iTunes. Just search superjersh or superjersh Show. If you want to be a part of the show with any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can email us superjershshow@gmail.com. Joining me again on this episode is Mirrors. Hello, Mirrors.
Hello, everybody.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Third time's a charm. and we literally just reviewed another Ben Affleck movie 2 days ago.
Oh yeah.
But I was actually I was able to make the Flash work, and I thought it would be fun to go ahead and try to review it sooner rather than later.
We should rename this the Ben Affleck Show instead of the Supergirl Show. That's your new title.
We only
We only do.
Exactly. So on this episode, we're pretty much only going to review The Flash. We're first going to briefly talk about the Ezra Miller effect. Then we will talk about our overall thoughts on the DCEU or familiarity with the DC movies and characters as a whole. Before we get into the review, we will have a spoiler-free review and then a clearly marked spoiler-filled discussion. And if you want to know where these chapters begin and end, there are time codes in the show notes. So I thought it would be best to address the elephant in the room and get it out of the way so that we can acknowledge any thoughts or feelings that we have about Ezra Miller as the Flash and the things that have gone on over the last couple of years in the anticipation of the film coming out. That way we can kind of get that information out of the way and strictly discuss the movie on its own merits, good or bad, and not have to keep pausing for any kind of Ezra Miller personal commentary outside of the film itself. So, is there anything, Mirrors, that you want to say about Ezra Miller in general before we get into the actual discussion?
Um, I think that they are definitely not a good person. They make some bad decisions. Um, and I think when Warner Brothers made them put out a statement apologizing, I think that's the only reason they did it was to save their job and
Mm-hmm.
to still be in this movie and stay in their good graces. Um, I think it's unfortunate that um, some other actors who maybe were innocent were cut out of Warner Brothers movies, and they let other actors, Ezra Miller and other people, stay in these roles who are actually guilty of doing horrible things.
Are you talking about
Um,
Cyborg Ray Fisher? Or are you talking about somebody else?
no,
Oh, okay.
uh, Amber Heard
Oh, that's right. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay.
and somebody she's connected to was removed from a movie.
So
She was
it's really
accused.
interesting. I didn't even realize because I've seen Aquaman half of it once. I forgot she was even involved in the DC
Hmm.
movies. And then now
Hmm.
that you say that out loud, I'm like, that's very interesting to think about because one person gets cut out of it and one person is like, no, that's the star and come to the premiere and all that. Interesting.
Yeah, they let her stay in, even though she had a small role in Justice League. They let her stay in that. They kept her in the Snyder Cut. And she also, for a long time, was still attached to being Aquaman too. And I think now she's actually out of it, I believe, the
Hmm.
last I heard. But it was like, okay, let's leave her in. Let's cut Johnny Depp out.
Right.
It didn't sit well with me for a while, and I didn't see the most recent Fantastic Beasts movie because Ezra Miller was also in that.
Oh,
Even
really?
after the controversies, they still left them in and did not recast. And so I just thought these were all poor decisions made by Warner Brothers. Yeah, and I wanted to to boycott this movie for that reason, but I was like, I feel like I need to see it.
Okay. Yeah, for me, I agree. The reports that I read about Ezra Miller, the things that they did, and it's not. I mean, people make mistakes. But with their situation, it wasn't a one-off thing. I feel like it was a string
Mm-hmm.
of events, a pattern of behavior, a disregard for respect for other human beings. Um, the I won't even get into all the details, but the other
Mm-hmm.
alleged incidents that are occurring with this cult that they're starting and these followers and the the weed island or something like that. There's a lot of things in their personal life that is harmful to a lot of other people around them, and um, I would not miss them if their film career ended. And I don't
Yes.
think um, I don't think I very rarely think any human being is so important to a piece of entertainment that it's worth keeping them around, you know, based on the type of pain and they've caused other human beings. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just like as a human being, let alone the business side, the baggage of it all, and the spin doctoring that you need to do to keep headlines as clean as possible. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yes, they absolutely have done terrible things. I would be perfectly glad if their film career was over, and I would be perfectly glad if somebody else played the Flash, and I'd be just fine with
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yes.
So that's where I stand. Ezra Miller, it's a Tom Cruise situation for me, where I genuinely probably despise you in your personal life, but I'm gonna watch this movie because a movie's a movie, and I can't change what you're doing in your personal life otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that's pretty much all I have to say or feel about the matter. Just to make it clear, because if I say anything good or bad, complimentary or derogatory about the film itself and the merits of the film itself, it's just about the movie when I'm in those moments. Just so everybody's clear, and for Mirrors as well.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about briefly our familiarity with the DCU, or formerly known as the DCEU, the DC's cinematic universe. Just overall thoughts, maybe highs and lows, movies you've seen, movies you missed, and how that impacted your expectations getting into this. And then I will share that as well, and then we can actually get into the review proper.
Okay, so I grew up as a DC kid. My dad and his two brothers have always been obsessed with Superman and Batman. So I grew up just like loving them. We had cardboard cutouts in my basement. So my one of my first words was Superman. So I've literally grown up on this. Loved Supergirl, Wonder Woman, always, those were two of my idols as a little girl. The 1984 movie Supergirl, starring Helen Slater, was one of my favorites as a child.
Mm-hmm.
It has not aged that well, as I have learned when I watched it again after 20
Oh,
years, a couple
really?
years
I've
ago.
never seen it, so
Um,
okay.
it is, it's not good. But as a kid, kids love bad movies. So,
Sure.
so yeah, so it's been a big part of my life. I have seen, I think, all the Superman movies, all the, Christopher Reeve ones. I've seen most of the Batman movies, the Wonder Woman movies. The first one was a lot better than the second one. I've seen some of the shows, The Flash, Green Arrow, watched Smallville,
Oh, wow, dang.
been to the Metropolis, Illinois Superman celebration numerous times. I met Helen Slater, I met Allison Mack of
Oh my
Nexium
gosh.
fame. Um, so that's two people in the DCs in a cult.
That's
Um,
oh, that's right. I thought I heard about that.
there was a video on YouTube of, you can hear my voice asking her a question at a Q&A.
Snap.
Um, I've met Noelle Neal, who's the OG. Lois Lane, insert picture here. Just kidding. Um, I mean, as a kid, Superman shirts, Supergirl hats, everything, loved. And then once Marvel came into the picture and they were producing higher quality movies
Mm-hmm.
than DC was, I kind of switched over there.
Sure.
And then, I mean, DC just kept disappointing me, over these past, like 15 years. And
Yeah, I'd say 10 years. Man of Steel kicked off in 2013. So I'd say about
okay,
the last
yeah,
10 that it pretty much started with Man of Steel cuz the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy ended and
yeah,
then the
yeah.
DCEU went from there, and Dark Knight Rises was 2012, Man of Steel was 2013.
Okay.
So, yep.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So anything after Dark Knight Rises has been pretty much. I enjoyed Man of Steel. I think that was the lesser of the evils. After that, it really was downhill for me, and I think pretty irredeemable. The original cut of Justice League is honestly one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
It's pretty rough.
The Snyder cut was better, but it was still okay to me. The
Mhm.
first Wonder Woman movie, like I said earlier, I thought at that point I thought, okay, this is maybe the best one since Man of Steel. But they've just, I mean, every time they just disappoint so much, so much, and Marvel was just kicking their butt. But now it's kind of, to me, kind of reversing. DC is kind of getting more of a chance to be that new Marvel, where Marvel has kind of hit its plateau, I
Yeah, they kind of
feel.
been floundering since Endgame in my opinion, yeah.
It's kind of like, there's other storylines. Um, they've got, I know Russo brothers, I think, are producing a couple more or something like that. They've got some other storylines coming, but it's kind of like, I don't know, after Endgame, that's supposed to be like the biggest, the end all be all was Thanos, at least how they build it up to us. And it's like, okay, then what? What after that? Another Fantastic Four movie, another, whatever.
Well, and it's just like with DCU, it's like, every movie culminates with a blue laser from the sky. It's just diminishing returns. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I've seen the Suicide Squad. I haven't seen the first one. The second one, I actually thought that was a pretty solid movie.
Yeah, the second one is very good. Um, let me let me just ask you one more question, then I'll fill you in on my backstory. Then we'll get to the review. Did you watch the
Mhm.
trailers for The Flash?
I could not avoid it. They were everywhere. It was always in the before movies that I saw in the
Uh
theater. I
huh.
mean, just kind of everywhere. But I only knew, and I won't say anything spoilery. I only knew about one, I guess, one kind of surprise,
Mm hmm.
and that was it. I didn't know anything else really other than a character who was returning, which is
Right.
very, they just show off in the trailer.
Yeah, I wish they
Anything else
didn't.
after that, I didn't know.
Can you
So
imagine
I
if you
loved
didn't know that? Fucking
that would have
minds would.
blown my mind.
Yeah, it would be unbelievable. It would have been. It would have been probably the best thing you ever saw in a movie in your life if you didn't know that was going to
Mhm.
happen when it happened.
Mhm.
I said the same thing about No Way Home. Like, imagine if that information
Well, in that
hadn't
one,
slipped.
I didn't know that
The
I
third
guess I
one.
don't I
The third one. Like, you knew about probably one guest, but maybe not another guest.
yeah, I knew definitely yes.
Right. Okay. Yeah. See.
Because I
So
wasn't sure because they were holding out on if they ran it or not.
yeah.
I didn't know until I saw it.
If you're new around here, we're very spoiler averse. We
Mhm.
very much care about preserving the experience of watching the film yourselves. Well, I will not be as cryptic in the spoiler section, I promise. um,
Oh yeah, I'm gonna go all out.
yeah. So I will say, for me briefly, I grew up a Batman kid. The Tim Burton Batmans, obviously. I think the first two, Batman and Batman Returns, are definitely two of the best superhero movies ever made. Um, what Joel Schumacher did, whatever. It was fine when you're a kid, but when you try to rewatch it, it's like you said, it's awful. But
Hmm.
Batman and Batman Returns, I watch Batman Returns every Christmas. Like, it's a phenomenal movie. That one, it's decidedly not for kids. There's a lot of entendre and jokes in that film that goes over your
Hmm.
head when you're younger. When you're an adult, I'm like, I can't fucking believe I watched this.
I know the
Um,
Penguin says some heinous stuff.
Awful, terrible things. It's unbelievable. Um, so yes, I enjoyed very much the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy. I will say that Dark Knight Rises, I really liked when I watched it, and then I was really sour on it on a rewatch, and it's warmed up to me again over time. I think everyone can agree that Dark Knight is the high watermark, but
Hmm.
I would actually probably put Rises over Begins, even though Begins is better character work. I think Rises has kind of more spectacle and more emotional involvement since you've spent 8 years with these characters and two movies. It's the ending of a trilogy, so I don't know. um, I love Tom Hardy as Bane, even though I don't love what they did with that character necessarily. Maybe we can do like a retro review someday and talk about those movies. But obviously saw the Christopher Nolan trilogy. The DCU movies have been awful. I agree. Man of Steel was probably the high point before the Flash, or leading up to this release. Um, I think if I remember correctly, I think the trailer for Man of Steel is like maybe one of the best trailers ever
It's
made.
oh
Just the
yes, the TV
anticipation
spots.
and the Hans Zimmer score introduction and a little boy with a
Mm-hmm.
red cape, like oh my fucking god, like yeah,
Mm-hmm.
just incredible.
And
um
didn't the TV spots, like when it first it was just like the Zod, like
yeah, it was just
the
Zod,
TV
Michael
message he's
Shannon
at.
Zod, yes, yeah,
And so it was like, what the heck is this? Like, oh my gosh. Yeah, that oh,
yeah.
you just brought back all these memories about that.
Yeah, it gives you chills
Go
just thinking about it.
ahead. Yeah.
um so yeah, the DC movies proper have been hit or miss for me. I never watched any of the Aquamans. I didn't watch I saw Batman versus Superman. I'm like, God, I hated that movie. I like watched it opening weekend in IMAX. I'm like, this is fucking
Mm-hmm.
awful. This is just bad.
It had so much
Um,
potential.
yes, I like Ben Affleck as Batman. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I
Mm-hmm.
like Henry Cavill as Superman. I did not like Jesse Eisenberg as Social Network. Um, what is Lex Luthor? Yeah,
Lex Luthor, yeah.
exactly. Um,
So
I
memorable.
I watched both Suicide Squad movies. The first one, it wasn't maybe wasn't as it wasn't great. It wasn't the worst movie I ever saw, but it certainly I couldn't tell you anything that happened in it to this day. It's very forgettable. It had a really good trailer and beautiful cinematography, but otherwise it's pretty forgetful. The Suicide Squad, which was written and directed by James Gunn, actually was pretty good. So yeah, and as far as trailers go for The Flash, I saw the announcement trailer around Super Bowl time. I wasn't able to avoid that one. The subsequent trailers where they kept sharing more footage, I was able to avoid. I didn't go to the theaters as often, and when I did, I'd close my eyes. Um, like when I went to see The Flash today, there was an Oppenheimer trailer and a Mission Impossible trailer, and I literally cover my ear and close my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I still have not seen any trailers, basically any footage beyond a still photo of both of those movies.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, I shut my eyes too.
So now, if anybody cares, you have an understanding of, where we are coming to with this movie, which I would say both of our expectations were pretty low considering the DCU
Mm-hmm.
output to date.
Mm-hmm.
So let's find out what we thought about The Flash. This is the spoiler free discussion about The Flash, but we are going to share some light plot details that have already been revealed in those trailers. Now, in my opinion, trailers these days should not be watched. They give away too many plot points, too many character reveals, too many action set piece moments that I think would be better fulfilled and realized in seeing it for the first time in the movie itself. So if you are very spoiler averse like me and don't watch trailers, the spoiler free section is going to get into some of the things that were revealed. But it's not going to spoil anything that has not been revealed and really nothing in the back half of the movie. So you really don't have to worry about spoilers in the spoiler free section. So having said that, The Flash was directed by Andy Muschietti and stars Ezra Miller, Sasha Calle, Michael Shannon. It's funny how Michael Shannon, Ron Livingston, Maribel Verdley, Kiersey Clemens, Anche Trow, and Michael Keaton. Yes, Michael Keaton being in the movie is public knowledge. It's been in every trailer. He has posters. We're not considering that a spoiler. Andy Muschietti is mostly known for directing the It movies, and this is his.
Oh.
Yeah, he directed both It movies, and yeah, and yeah. So that's where we're at. Enough preamble. Mirrors. What did you think of the movie?
So yeah, like you said, going in with low expectations. I didn't want to like this movie going into it. I was like, this is probably gonna suck. but I feel like because I was hit in the face with the trailer so many times, and just
Mm.
because Michael Keaton, I was like, I feel like I have to see this. I have to see this on a big screen. I have to see this. I went and saw it in like
Did you see?
my local theater's version of
Is
IMAX.
it XD?
Um, XD.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
I actually
Cinemark.
saw Elementals on XD, which we're not doing an official review for that, but yesterday as a family we saw Elementals, and I that was my first XD experience, and I was surprised how it compared to IMAX because I watched The Flash on IMAX, so I watched Elementals on XD yesterday and The Flash on IMAX today. And even though the IMAX is bigger in my preferred experience, I think the XD is a really good option if you don't have an IMAX near you, and it's worth seeing it in XD. But go ahead, continue.
Mm-hmm. And so yeah, I was like, I need to see this on the biggest screen we have. And I'm so glad I did that because I don't care what anybody says. I loved this movie.
Okay.
I I said it wasn't even to the end. I turned to my dad and I was like, DC's finally done it. This is it. They've they've finally done what they've been trying to do. They're I think they're out marveling Marvel. I think this is what Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness should have been.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
To me, it rivaled Spider-Man No Way Home. I had similar feelings also because of
Mm-hmm.
as a child, seeing, no spoilers, the things we saw on the screen.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite movie going experiences. I had so much fun. The crowd that saw the movie was great. We were all having fun. People were, making noises, there were claps, there were laughter. I mean, it was just one of my favorite personal movie going experiences, which I think also like added to me really liking this movie. Um yeah, I really loved it. And I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad they finally did something good for once, I think. I was so happy. I'm like, okay, we're back.
See, so you're not that far off from feeling what it's like to be a parent. Finally, something worthwhile.
Finally, I did something good.
Yeah. um. So yeah, was there? So yeah, I'll just share overall, then we can get into more details, and then we'll get to spoilers. I would say that I finally got there to feeling how you're feeling. I ultimately love this movie too. I thought that it started a little clunky, and I thought there were some scenes in the middle that maybe dragged a little bit, where the bits kind of worn on a little too long, like where there's 5 or 6 people standing around, barely talking except for the Flash, and I'm just like, how long do we need to be here? I don't understand why we're still sitting here. So a little bit of pacing issues and introductions issues aside, I loved the movie as well. In particular, the last half of the movie. I was very, very surprised how much I enjoyed it and how well a lot of things came together. I also, even though I did see that initial announcement trailer, and I wish I didn't know Michael Keaton was in this movie, how much better that would be. Having said that, the kind of big set piece that was teased in the first official trailer, I feel like it actually didn't spoil a ton, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, yeah, these characters are going to meet at some point and there's going to be kind of this battle, but there's a lot of other stuff in the movie besides that scene and that one action sequence. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of other stuff in the movie. And so, yeah, I thought the acting was fantastic. I thought it was a beautiful movie. The cinematography was absolutely gorgeous. There are some shots where I'm like, that's one of my favorite Batman things I've ever seen. I could give two shits about the Flash, but I definitely am way more intrigued by the character after this movie, and I feel like I have a little bit more of an understanding of the Flash's powers, how they got them. Like, I didn't even remember or know all that stuff because the Justice League shit was so forgettable. I'm like, I don't know. He runs fast. I didn't watch the Flash. I watched no TV shows, nothing, on CW or whatever. So my only familiarity was like the Justice League movies. Like, that's pretty much it. And
Okay.
so, yeah, understanding what he can do. Yeah, I also think that they did reveal in the trailer that this is kind of like a multiverse movie where multiverse is like really, it's so hot right now. It's like that Hansel. He's so hot right now. And so this is definitely up there with one of the better iterations of that for a lot of reasons that we'll get to in spoilers. I liked this movie a lot more than Across the Spider-Verse. And yeah, I think it's up there with No Way Home. It might exceed No Way Home for me as well. Because, and again, we'll talk about it in spoilers. I thought the music was like really powerful, and like some themes that come back can like put tears in your eyes, and the new themes that they wrote for the new moments were very fitting for the emotional beats that you had in this movie. Sometimes the special effects were like photorealistic, amazing, and sometimes the special effects were like 2001 PS2, where I'm like, is that supposed to look fake? I think it's not supposed to be realistic. I think it's supposed to be cartoonish, because
we could get
that's
that.
rough. Yeah. But yeah, there wasn't a lot to dislike. I would say kind of one of the bigger emotional cores. There's a couple different emotional cores that reminded me of another movie that I won't say here. I'll save it for later. But the main emotional core that is revealed in the trailer of him wanting to save his mom, I felt like we got a sort of kind of perfunctory, abridged reintroduction to his family to try to care more, but I didn't really get on board with like, I wasn't emotionally invested with that part of the quest, which that's just one part of the story. You know what I mean? Like things develop and progress throughout the movie, which again, I think is another huge credit to the structure of the movie. Whereas Across the Spider-Verse seemed to drag and really be stuck on this one idea, this movie, I feel like it introduces one idea and you know why certain events happen in the movie, but then once those events transpire and new characters get introduced, then like, intentions and desires can change and progress. And it's like, in the last half of the movie, we're not just chasing that one MacGuffin thing. There's more to it. It builds on itself, I thought, in a really satisfying way. Anything else you want to add, good or bad, in the spoiler-free section?
No, I've got a lot to say in the spoiler section, so I'll keep as quiet as I can for now, because I'm gonna go.
Let's say here, while we're still spoiler free, what did you think of the performances without giving too much away? In particular, the main characters that were revealed: Flash, Batman, and Supergirl.
I thought Flash's performance was very good. I was very happy with that. I thought being able to well, no, I'll keep that. I don't know if that's a spoiler or not. I can't remember if that was in the trailer.
Okay.
But just being able to do what who Barry was acting with in the movie most of the time.
Yes. That was the best. Yeah, that was great.
Yes, and I thought that was a good job. I thought the difference in the characters, being able to be the same character but also two very different people, and lean on the idea of, like you said, the mother, being there and not there, and how that affects you, how that affects your mentality. I just thought that was such a great job. I thought, Michael Keaton did a great job. Did it
seem like the Keaton stuff, again, no spoilers, did it seem like it was all nostalgia, or did it feel like watching Batman again?
It felt like watching Batman again. I felt like he just was right in the role. There was obviously the one line that was meant, as nostalgia to punch you in the gut and, yell out and get really excited about. But I think he fit right in. I think Michael Keaton was probably very excited to be back in the role, is what I've heard, that he was like, all in on this.
That's so cool.
So yeah, I mean, yeah. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But yes, I think the performances, I was very impressed with all the actors' performances.
I agree. I will say, yeah, I really enjoyed Ezra Miller as the Flash. Um, there are moments, there are scenes when you hear a lot of his voice, a lot of the Flash character's voice for extended amounts of times, where it's like a lot of the whiny, nasally,
Oh, the
fast-paced
whiny. Yeah.
dialogue can be a little overbearing. I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, I thought the performances were great. I agree that this Batman feels like a continuation of Batman and wasn't just nostalgia bait. The nostalgia moments are sprinkled in for frosting, but they are not the cake. Like, he's not just there because you remember Tim Burton's Batman. He is that character because that's what this storyline allows you to do, but he he's a part of it. He's a character, and he has some things that he's actually working on and thinking about too that I think is really hinted at really beautifully as well. And the Supergirl character started I like so mysterious. I wasn't interested because I'm like, I don't know what to think. I don't know what to expect. But then, as you know, we that character becomes more like the character on the poster, and she learns the state of the world as it is in now and learns what these characters are trying to do. I was like all in on that Supergirl. I was like, this fucking character is awesome.
As a Supergirl fan,
Yeah.
I was very happy with it.
Yeah.
I was very happy.
Um,
And I was so happy she wasn't in a short little skirt.
the outfit is amazing.
I loved the suit.
It's very.
I loved
cool.
that it was very Superman.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and yeah, Michael.
She wasn't a blonde white woman. So I
Yeah,
think that was
exactly.
great too.
Yeah.
She didn't look American. If she's
yeah.
an alien.
Because she's from freaking Krypton. So yeah, not a lot of complaints. I already mentioned the complaints. I'll maybe mention a few more at in the spoiler section, but I want to say
you don't
again.
have any more complaints. It's fine.
Yeah. So I will say I definitely recommend seeing this movie in theaters. See it on a big screen, IMAX, XD. We're going to go ahead and give ratings here in the spoiler-free section, and then we'll get into spoilers. So, Mirrors, based on the 1 to 10 scale that we have on superjersh.com, what would you rate the movie?
I decided to give it a 9.5.
Damn!
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
A 9.5.
So I teetered back and forth between 8.5 and 9. I'm pretty high as well, but I'm going to give it a 9. Like, this is a movie that I'm going to rewatch. And that's something that I think about as well when I'm thinking about how do I feel about movies in the moment and how do I anticipate I'll feel about them in the future. It's obviously unknowable, but you just kind of, you know yourself and you know what you want out of a movie. And there are moments, sequences, ideas, again, performance moments, action moments, music moments that it's like, I feel like even though some things felt rushed, it's going to help with the rewatchability of the movie. Because it's like, the first time you watched it, it felt rushed. But then, if you want to really enjoy and revisit a movie, if you're a super serious movie nerd, like I fucking am, you want to rewatch movies you love over and over again, you kind of appreciate that pacing then, because it's better. Okay, enough about avoiding spoilers. Let's dive right in. Full spoiler warning for the movie The Flash. You have been warned. This is full spoilers. If you haven't seen the movie yet, me and Mirrors both highly recommend seeing it in theaters. Pause the video, pause the podcast, watch the movie on a big screen, come back for spoilers. This episode will still be here. As a side note, speaking of reviews, I'm of two minds when it comes to reviews. Like, on one hand, they're very kind of junk food content because you consume it. It's like, okay, I watched a movie, now I listened to a review, and I'm done. But because you're capturing your thoughts in the moment after watching a movie, there is a longevity to reviews. People in the future might be curious about your thoughts about old movies, or maybe somebody might want to revisit what you thought about a movie if it's been a couple of years, or if you need to remind yourself how you thought and felt in the moment, it's recorded. You know what I mean? So I think reviews definitely do have value. Like a lot of people, I know a lot of people that will like go back and read reviews, like old Roger Ebert reviews from the '90s and stuff, just to see what people thought about movies then. It's kind of cool, like a time capsule.
Or even for us, like if we reviewed a movie and then say there's a sequel and we're like, okay, well, let's go back to see what we thought about the first one because, it's been 10 years or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, full spoiler warning, gave you enough time to pause and stop. So let's get into it. So what were some of your highlights or lowlights, or what do you want to talk about when you talk about spoilers?
I want to talk about that Chrono Bowl scene where all the worlds are.
Oh, right, at the very end. So, at the very end,
Do you want me to start at the beginning or what? How do you want it? Because that's going to be the thing I talk about the most, I think.
yeah, I would say let's backtrack a little bit.
Okay.
Is there anything more specific, kind of throughout the movie that you want to
Oh,
dig into, either good or bad?
okay. So, like the first big scene, the hospital scene.
Yeah. I was a
Okay.
little worried. I was like, I don't know about this.
What's funny is I had the opposite reaction. I thought that it was so insane and so stupid that I was laughing hysterically. I've
Mm-hmm.
not laughed like this in a movie theater in a long time. Tears were streaming down my face. I couldn't breathe. What I just couldn't. I was like, this is the most insane thing I've ever seen in a movie. It's
Yeah.
babies falling in slow motion and he's having to try to figure out how to save them all. I was like, what the fuck is this? It was insane.
I
I
would
couldn't believe it, and I was just crying laughing.
see. And I did get there once the movie shifted that tone to let me know that's what it was going for. When it was set up, and it's like, oh, it's the baby ward, and 100 babies are gonna fall out of a window, and it was like being played for serious. I was like rolling my eyes. I'm like,
Oh,
this is. I'm like listening to the. I'm like seeing the screenwriters in the pitch meeting. Like, what's the most devastating, most serious, super serious thing we can think of? I know, baby's gonna die. You know what I mean? Like, and
oh no,
so
I didn't.
I at first when it was introduced, like here's the stakes, here's who we need to save. I was like, come on, you can't, I can't, this is like, it feels like so cheap. Like they're gonna hurt babies, root for the hero. But then when it goes into slow mo and the music kicks in and he starts cooking himself a burrito while he's saving the baby, and then he uses the microwave to save, and you finally, and it revealed itself to be for laughs with the dog in slow motion and everything like that. I was like, okay, I'm so happy that they realized how ridiculous this is because it's introduced seriously, but then reveals itself to be for a laugh and for entertainment. Yeah.
And it was when I saw the building start leaning in, and then it goes into the baby ward, and it shows them rolling out the window. My mouth was open. My mom's mouth was open. I was like, "What is this?"
Yeah.
And there, I mean, you should have heard like the whole row I was in was like just in hysterics. This was just one of my favorite scenes I've ever seen in a movie theater. Honestly, it was like, what sicko thought of this?
So I saw it during
Um,
the day on a Saturday, and our theater was not packed.
mm,
It was 2/3 empty in IMAX. But it was, again, a Saturday afternoon in a reasonably weathered summer day. Most people go to movies at night, so that's not necessarily, that's anecdotal to how the movie's going to do this weekend or what people thought of it or what the interest in was it. But so I didn't have those big crowd moments. I just had those moments myself and my son. I actually took my son to see this movie with
oh,
me.
okay.
And so he could probably take or leave any live action movie that isn't Spider-Man. He's obsessed with Spider-Man. Otherwise, he mostly watches animation and Pixar stuff. He's 10 and a half. So, but I, again, looked at the rating, saw what was in it, and was like, he can go. It's mostly comic book action. It's
Yeah.
fine. And anyway, yeah. So I didn't have the big crowd moments, but I felt the moments from the movie. I think that's a strength to the movie is that I didn't get caught up in what people around me were feeling. The movie was just getting an emotional response out of me as the sequences were building.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so you have the big baby, big baby moment, and then this is where it was like I was again slightly losing interest a little bit with the courtroom drama and the awkward back and forth with the love interest slash reporter. It all was like super expositional, which I guess in hindsight is really important because not everybody knows what the hell's going on with the Flash character, myself included. So probably was necessary in hindsight, but in the moment I was like, I don't know how interested I am in this, you know?
Also, did you catch where Iris says, like, oh, haven't I seen you recently? And Bear's like, oh, no. That was from the Snyder Cut. He saw her when he was, like, speeding by. She was, like, outside, like, a
Oh.
coffee shop or something. And he, like, all of a sudden kind of stops and looks. And he's like,
No, I
That was
watched the
her.
Snyder Cut once. It's a 4-hour time commitment.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I've never seen it more than once.
I
I'm not
recorded a review
crazy.
on it, and I remember liking it, but I definitely couldn't tell you a lot of what happens in that movie either.
Yeah, that was a callback to that.
That's cool. So the first act is really all about trying to get you to care about Barry. You know, it's here's my family on the family farm, and
These family farm things.
Yeah.
There's my family dad in family jail.
to our family grocery store for some family tomato soup, or family tomatoes. And so, you know, I understood that, you know, that it was necessary, but in rewatches, I'm probably just going to get to, you know, the time travel, the multiverse. And then from then on, I'm probably going to watch it. I won't skip anything. So the movie, there's going to be light spoilers for time travel movies, obviously, and multiverse movies. So light spoilers for, you know, Across the Spider-Verse, multiverse, light spoilers for the movie Looper.
Light spoilers for Back to the Future.
Back to the Future. Yeah, light spoilers for real life movie nerd trivia.
Yeah.
Which I fucking
Oh, I
loved.
loved that. Yes, I knew exactly what they were talking about.
Yeah. So yeah, I will say that, what else? I lost my train of thought.
You can go back in time and try to find it.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, so when he meets his alternate self, his younger self, and starts to feel like, you know, the older, more mature version of himself lecturing the child version of himself, I got real Looper vibes with Bruce Willis lecturing Joseph Gordon-Levitt, like, you stupid boy, you don't even know what you have, you don't even appreciate, you know, the life that you've been gifted, and, you know, you're just strutting around thinking you're the shit, and you're not, you know. So yeah, just like this, like, it's like when we first meet Barry, he's the Flash, but then when he meets an even younger Barry, and he's even more eccentric and more fast-paced and more less focused, he's like the one with wisdom all of a sudden. Which I thought was a fun dynamic, you know. So he saves his mom basically successfully, but then finds out that he didn't just go back in time. He created, you know, different versions of time. And there's two things. Again, time travel is a very tired trope. And there's two things that I thought this movie did really brilliantly and really clever that I thought was like new in the sci-fi space here that I really appreciate it for. And the first is all time travel talks about changing the future. It doesn't talk about changing the past. And that felt very fresh
Yes.
and new. And then the other thing that I'll say is the spaghetti as a metaphor. I really liked that. I thought I was like, that's like really clever. I've never seen that in a movie before, and it totally makes sense. And it's a really good tie-in to the characterization of Barry needing a bunch of calories because he burned so much. We saw him eating spaghetti earlier. Now Batman's eating spaghetti. So yeah, just the rules of the time travel and the multiverse stuff, and just saying like, it's fucking weird, man. It's messy. And it kind of overlapped with Across the Spider-Verse with these kind of, these people need to meet and these events need to happen. But
Canon events.
I thought it was, again, like, this movie danced around the phrase canon events and just showed you, you know what I mean? And Across the Spider-Verse just exposits it. You know what I mean? Like, it's very descriptive and literal about it instead of being a little bit more artistic about it, you know? This is a canon event. This is important. Whereas in this movie, it's just like, hey, some people are drawn to each other and some things need to happen and you're going to learn the hard way. And it just shows you through the movie. It shows you it. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? Instead of just telling it to you. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
your turn. As we're going through the story of this movie, um, but yeah, anything to add, kind of in the first act of the movie before we get to the time travel?
I liked what do you mean the time travel? Like before he goes back and changes it
Yeah,
to
or kind of in that
uh
same area, like right when he changes and he meets himself. You know.
I thought that it was that I was glad that it didn't show us like him actually having like the accident. You know what I mean? Like it didn't show like his origin. It showed us whenever he was having to do it to
Right.
himself.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that that was clever. Um,
What do you think of Ben Affleck's Batman? Did you expect him to be in the movie more?
I expected it to be more than what it was. I was kind of surprised because I had heard that he was very he said he felt better as like as Batman in this movie than he had
Mm-hmm.
working with previous directors.
Yeah.
That this was the Batman that he wanted to play, is what I heard him say. Um, but yeah, I was kind of surprised that there wasn't a little bit more, but he did have kind of a big role in that.
It's pretty much
It was
the opening set piece, and that's it. You know what I mean? He like
yeah.
says goodbye to the Flash and is not
Hmm.
really there anymore.
But
So,
he was the one, that warned him that said, "Don't do this."
dude, exactly. And it's
So you
like,
kind of always went back to think about, oh, Batfleck said, "Don't do
mm-hmm,
this."
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Um, so then I thought the one thing that I thought was kind of a jump, an assumption, is so Flash, original Barry. I got to backtrack again. It's a time travel movie. Um,
We gotta go back.
when he went through that portal and got punched by that blue monster thing, I was like, "What the fuck is that? What was that?" I was like completely confused. You know what I mean? Because if you
Hmm.
remember the first time he goes through kind of the portal and like when he's like in that dome, you named it a second ago. I forgot the
The
name.
Chrono Bowl.
Yeah, the Chrono Bowl. When he was in the Chrono Bowl, a blue-eyed monster punches him out of it.
Hmm.
And when you're seeing that moment, you're like, okay, like I know it's a time travel movie, so that's probably going to come back. But then I forgot about it because so much other stuff happened in
Uh
the
huh.
movie
Hmm.
where he loses his powers, and then he has to go to try to he's like, oh, I'm afraid you're not going to get your powers, so he goes to try to give younger Barry his powers, but ends up costing himself in the process. So he has to
Hmm.
teach himself how to have his powers again, and has to get used to not having powers, which I thought that was like a really fun, interesting dynamic because you still got the fun of the Flash with the younger Barry, but you got the
Hmm.
struggle and the danger of having a Flash without his powers literally in the same movie. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
he was completely dependent on everybody else around him, and I thought that was really cool. Um, so they escape, they get out of there, they talk to his roommates, and yeah, this scene like dragged on forever. I'm like, I don't care about the guy on the couch. I don't care about it's just taking forever. So I didn't care about the friends or people in the apartment, but I just thought it was strange that the simple fact that they didn't know who those superheroes were, for him to jump to the conclusion that, oh, meta humans must not exist, I thought that was like quite a leap in logic. Like that doesn't mean there's no superheroes. I feel like that was like the one of the only things the movie shorthanded with like a one-off sentence that I wish we could have like realized. Like I wish we could have seen crime running rampant and like him realizing no superheroes are flying in from the sky to help. There's no justice. Like I wish he would have realized it instead of just knowing it. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you don't know who these heroes are, but again, that's a very small nitpick where I'm just imagining even cooler scenes of like there's no superheroes here to help. You know what I mean? Like that I thought that could
Yeah,
have been like
it could
really
have
cool.
been like he was trying to call for help or something and nobody
Mhm.
was coming. But I think the reason that he did jump to that was because with like with the movies and with Justice League, they were so like out there like we're here and there was like the destruction with Batman versus Superman and Man of Steel. They knew about General Zod coming in. They knew there were aliens. So they knew there was Superman. I think it was just kind of like, this is such a widely known thing that, like, if they don't know what this is, like, where am I, type thing.
Gotcha. Yeah. So they realize there's no superheroes, but they do know who Batman is, because Batman was not a meta-human. He was a regular human whose superpower was he's rich, as stated by Ben Affleck in the Justice League. And so they go to try to get Batman's help, and we get introduced to Michael Keaton, and it's fucking awesome. It's great. I will say, we just talked about needle drops in air and, like, you know, pop music landing in scenes, and that was something that I feel like Andy Muschietti does that a lot. He did it like quite a bit in It Chapter 2. It was like, in particular, there was a scene in It Chapter 2 where, like, I Will Always Love You starts playing during, like, a horror scene. I don't know if you remember that, but, like, this ghost, like, captures one of the kids and pukes all over his face, and instead of it being scary, it's played for laughs. Anyway, so yeah, there was, like, some, you know, again, some old 80s or 90s rock song playing on the radio, which it was fun, but I'm a musical score guy, so I'm always going to prefer an original score over a pop song 9 times out of 10. But we get Michael Keaton. He needs a haircut, which I did not know he was going to look like that in the movie, because I don't think they revealed that in the trailer. In the first trailer, I never saw that. But we get the spaghetti reference that we talked about, and he agrees. He what?
Hey, you go ahead. You go ahead.
I was just gonna say, he agrees to help the berries. You were gonna add something to that?
Yeah, he lets us know that Gotham is the safest city.
yeah. Which
so I laughed out loud when he said that.
Yeah, because then that's just like a tidbit or a layering or a fun fact if you're, like, very familiar with, like, how crime-ridden Gotham is supposed to be.
Gotham's like the scuzziest city in the world.
Yeah, it's so safe. So they team up, and they're looking for Superman. We need to find Clark Kent, which I thought was a great misdirect, especially if you hadn't seen the trailer. Unfortunately, I knew it was going to be Supergirl because I saw the trailer. But we get the reintroduction of Batman with the Batwing coming down and the Danny Elfman music, and even though it was in the trailer, and even though it's totally for nostalgia, when that's the way that he delivers it. He's like, he knows it's silly that this matters, but it does. You know what I mean? He's like, yeah.
He's doing it for them because they know, like, the younger Barry, you know, is essentially the same as us. It's like a kid that grew up on Batman.
Exactly. It's so fucking perfect because, yes, the characters in the movie remember Batman from a long time ago, and then audiences remember Batman from a long time ago. So his kind of like, yeah, I'm Batman. Like, it's just fucking awesome. I loved it so much. Yes.
He did, like, a little bit of a pause, and I thought, oh, maybe he's, you know, that's a misdirect. He's not going to say it. He's going to say something else.
I'm Bruce.
And then when he said it, I was like, yes, he did the thing.
And I don't know. You never know with these callback, you know, legacy characters in these nostalgia laced movies, what their level of involvement is going to be. And he's Batman for the rest of the movie. The last half of the movie, it's Michael Keaton as fucking Batman. And you get the Batwing, you get the music, you get him a really good mixture of, I can tell that's actually Michael Keaton in the Batman suit again. I know it's him, and some really good seamless CGI for the higher energy action sequences. So you get to see old school Batman do things you never could have imagined when he originally existed and was introduced.
I thought he looked great. And then you see the Batwing against the moon that mimics the shadow.
When he skydives out of the Batwing after dropping them and opens his cowl for wings, and you see the Batwing against the moon and him flying down, and it's Michael Keaton as Batman. That's one of the coolest Batman things I've ever seen in my life. ever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was awesome. It's like, holy shit. Then we had a whole
And
huge... Yeah, go ahead.
I love that when he was like, your parachutes or, you're attached, whatever, and then they go, what about your parachute? And he
Yeah.
just looks at him.
Smiles and drops. Like, hell
It's
yeah,
like,
man.
hell yeah.
And then you get the fights, and the Batman, the bat cape is like bulletproof as well, so he puts that up and blocks and saves everybody, and he's just trying to be Batman. He's trying to help these kids save their parents because of his parents, and just, yeah, like, I really liked it, and how they all interacted together, and how he agreed, why he agreed to help them. He didn't say, like, is your mom's name Martha by chance?
Right.
That's the only reason I sign up for this shit, is what's your mom's name? And so they go and rescue Supergirl in a big action set piece, and then there's a huge, the rest of the movie action set piece basically after they go get Supergirl, except for a little bit of an aside where she goes to speak with Zod and realizes even though he's Kryptonian and like her, they don't have the same morals, they don't have the same ethics. She needs to side with the humans, even though that wasn't her gut instinct, which I thought that was a really interesting kind of few minutes of the movie exploring that character. I wish she had a little bit more to do there,
And it's and that's such a stark difference to Clark, who came to Earth as a baby and grew up as a human and was like, well, I'm gonna, protect this world against you because sure, I'm technically Kryptonian, but I'm also human. I'm a citizen of this Earth. And with her, all she had was humans mistreating her and being
tortured
imprisoned.
and imprisoned, exactly.
But she still saw, she still had those morals and she still saw that, this isn't right.
So we get, and the whole time in the movie, I'm asking myself, Zod's really the villain? Like, that's really going to be the villain of this movie, is just Zod again? I don't feel like that's right. I feel like the movie is better than that. This movie's getting really good. They're not just going to go back to Zod, are they? And what I thought was really beautiful and fun about it is they do and they don't at the same time. Because, like, yes, it's Zod, but also, through the conflict and fight at the end with the berries, they lose. They lose. Supergirl dies. Batman dies. And again, it's like, I'm in a time travel movie. I know what we're going to do. I still felt like that happened really fast in the moment. Oh, no, they're dead. All right, it's time to bring them back. Like, can we just act for 1 second like they actually died? Like... But yeah, I mean, again, like on a rewatch, it's an eventuality. This is literally a time travel movie. I'm not even going to give it half a moment's notice. I'm going to go try to save them right now. That's the whole theme of the movie, is trying to save people you can't save, And so I love that it came back. It started to loop in on itself and keep traveling, and how they were able to be in the Kronos Dome together. And like, when did you realize that dark blue villain that punched Barry was the other Barry? When did you realize it?
When there was like it was the first close up and I could see his mouth. I was like, oh, I leaned over. I was like, oh, that's Barry.
Interesting.
It took me a little while.
So admit. At the very beginning of the sequence, so I don't know if I caught this early or the filmmakers, that's the moment that the filmmakers wanted you to find out, because clearly, they're at the helm, they're deciding when to reveal what information. But the very first time they try to save Batman and Supergirl, and they don't, and the younger Barry looks at him and is like, let's go again. In my head, I was like, he's never going to stop. That's him. I figured it. That's when I figured it out. I didn't see it on the close-up of his face, but his impassioned plea to keep trying, I was like, oh my God, that's him. And I fucking love it. It's like really good. There's a quote. It's like, the best entertainment gives the audience exactly what they want in a way they weren't expecting. Right? So, of course, you want to see Barry versus Barry against himself, but I feel like how Across the Spider-Verse did it was a way I didn't want, because it was like really predictable and a mile away, and the dark version of myself, of course. This movie, I spent a whole movie falling in love with the two Barrys and them feeling a partnership and them being the Flash together and being a mentor to the younger one and teaching him his powers. So then finding out that him giving him his powers made him a super villain instead of a superhero. I really liked that. That was like really satisfying to have that realization and to have him be like really old. His hair was like white underneath that mask. Like he's been running forever. Like what?
And I thought it was so cool that his suit, like it's the same suit, but it's the buildup of the Kryptonian like sword
so cool.
getting stabbed over. Once it revealed that it was him, and I could see that, I was amazed. Like the costume design on that, I thought was incredible.
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah, I thought that was such a, because I was sitting there thinking, like when it was getting towards the end, I was like, they mentioned like they had the guy at the beginning. I was like, you know, like as you always say, if you bring up something in the first act, you gotta bring it up again in the third act. I was like, why is it like, why bring in like a villain at the end? Like what's going on here? But I was very happy with the conclusion to that.
I want to backtrack a little bit and talk about kind of the death of Batman, where you know the Barrys are like, no, we need to save you, I need to save you, and he's just like, kid, you already did. That like hit me, it got to me, because I'm like, that filled in so much for that character of like, we met him, you know, he was reclusive, long hair, alone, I haven't been Batman in a while. That's what I felt was like so smart about the writing of this movie. In the back half, the beginning was, it was again clunky and a little drawn on in some of the scenes, but especially in the back half, the mixture of character and action and plot resolution all melded together in a really satisfying way, where, you know, younger Barry becomes who he's going to become, older Barry becomes who he learns his lesson and becomes who he's going to become. Supergirl and Batman have to die. Batman gets his closure. Supergirl, she definitely was a supporting character. She wasn't meant to have a giant arc. I wished there was a little bit more there for her. But yeah, but the Batman you already did. Like, I got to be Batman one more time. Like, you gave me more than I could ever hope for. Just is like so fucking cool. Oh, just so good.
Yeah, I thought that was the perfect full circle for that Batman, for that character. I think that's a good, like, for the people who grew up with that, and it's kind of like, if he had just, I mean, sure, they could have left it open ended, like, oh, we left him alive in this universe, and oh, we know that in another universe he's still alive and he's still living, and if they wanted to, they could go and make another Batman, whatever. But I think just ending it, leaving it at that, you know, Michael Keaton is done. He's, you know, it's not overstaying his welcome as Batman again. I just thought it was just a perfect end to that Batman story. You know, he went through where he said, you know, Gotham's the safest city. They don't need me anymore. They don't need me as Batman. Oh, they need me again, and now I'm trying to save the world, and he's, you know, he died doing what he loved.
You're just not going to do better than this. You aren't.
Yeah.
The reintroduction, the callbacks, the freshness, feeling like, you know, again, like a continuation of that Batman. You got the line. Oh, you guys want to get nuts? You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. Like, oh my god, that's so fucking awesome. Oh, I love it so much. I almost like rewatched that Batman when I got home. I was like, should I do that or should we do the review? No, let's do the review. So yeah, and there was a great piece of dialogue. Like, isn't it interesting, our paradox? I'm trying to remember it. It was something, yeah, our paradoxical relationship where, you know, you created me, and I need you to end, or something like that. It was a great line. When I rewatch it, I'll remember the quote. It was really well written. I was like, that's a fucking good line of dialogue. I really like that.
It is interesting to think about the fact that this version of Barry Allen created the Tim Burton Batman movies.
Yeah, right?
He's single-handedly responsible for those happening.
So we get so younger Barry sacrifices himself, closing the loop, a la Looper. So the younger version dies, so the older version dies. You know, Barry Prime, original Barry, learns his lesson and realizes that things have to happen how they're going to happen. And it doesn't cut to black for a sequel setup. It resolves the problem set up. So he travels again and, has the moment with the mom, which I felt like it did hit a little bit. I didn't get emotional, but I felt that it hit more emotionally here than it did in the earlier setup because we had gone on this adventure with him and had warmed up to him. And he puts the tomato back, and then we get back to the trial. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm right. The movie is saying that when Barry went back to correct his mistake and looked up at the camera on accident, that older Barry looked like his dad. So that footage changed. So even though it looks like his dad looking up at the camera, that's actually Barry looking up at the camera, right?
No, I think it was, they said that, I guess him going back and putting the tomatoes back on the shelf somehow made it to where they now put the tomatoes on the top shelf. So he said the tomatoes moved to the top shelf, and then whenever he was talking to the reporters, and then he goes, "Oh, never mind, never mind." So that's what it was.
That's right.
Because Ron Livingston was there later.
So instead of looking down at the tomatoes, he looked up at the tomatoes. So it was actually Ron Livingston, but he looked up to grab the tomato instead of looking down, so you could see his face.
They changed on which shelf they did it.
And why did they do that?
It didn't, and see, that's the one thing, it didn't explain that, but whenever they said, like anything you do in the past, any one little thing, you step on the wrong blade of grass, It can change everything. I guess somehow him taking it off the shelf, putting it back on, somehow that caused a butterfly effect, which led to we're putting the tomatoes on the top shelf now.
I bet on a rewatch it makes more sense because I feel like it was really well thought out, this movie. They thought about the paradoxes, they thought about the continuations, they thought about the fun of being in a multiversal situation where you can talk about the past and the future and the differences in the world. Let's talk about seeing the other world, since that's what you wanted to talk about the most, and then we'll wrap this up. So in that final climax of being in the Kronos Dome, we start to see all the different versions of Superman, Supergirl, Batman. There were rumors and hopes that there was going to be a Christian Bale sighting as another Batman, but unfortunately he wasn't there. Probably Christopher Nolan said no because he's a fucking stick in the mud.
I know I've read because I fully expected that he would be, because I didn't know that anybody other than Michael Keaton was going to be. See, I had no idea about any of that in that scene. So I was so happy when that happened that I didn't know. And so that's what I thought who that was at the end. But I read where Christian Bale said he would only do it if Christopher Nolan signed off on it, like agreeing that his version of Batman would fit in the Snyderverse. But so I guess he said no.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So yeah,
how cool would that have been? just even a shot. I even thought a shot like if them. Like somehow Barry's like, "Oh, I need your help," or something like that, or him like in a coffee shop, him anywhere, just a flash of him.
I'm making a general assumption that Christopher Nolan is very prideful about his work and proud of his, and proud of it, and so he wants it to stand on his own. And if you just throw Christian Bale in with 10 other Batmans next to him, it diminishes the power of their time with Batman and makes it just another Batman. That's just me, just my conjecture, my theory. Probably why, yeah. So we see a couple of different things. So I will say a couple of things accidentally got spoiled for me on Twitter literally 2 days ago.
Oh no.
Just scrolling mindlessly, looking for funny stories. And I have a bunch of words muted on Twitch that I shouldn't have saw this spoiled, but so I saw a tweet that said they could have just used Christopher Reeve footage. And I was like, what? So it doesn't have Flash, it doesn't have Batman, it doesn't have Superman, it doesn't have keywords. It's just a blind spoiler text. Like, why would you tweet that out? Even if you have that thought, why would you say that? The movie's not even fucking out yet. Why would you do that? And then I saw a GIF of Nicolas Cage as Superman, but I
No.
didn't think it was going to be in this movie, so it wasn't technically spoiled for me. I thought people were just bringing up funny old Superman stories because
Uh-huh.
of the Batman Superman stuff that was going to be in this movie. It never dawned on me, not in a million years, that I would see
Yeah.
Nicolas Cage's Superman
Yeah.
fighting a giant spider, just like
Mm-hmm.
that mythological
I
Kevin
sure
Smith
wanted.
story.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So share your thoughts on that big multiverse moment.
Oh, okay. This was the most exciting part for me. Maybe my most, one of the times in my life where I've been most excited. I immediately reverted to year old Little Mirrors. Um, Seeing George Reeves, I lost my mind. I've watched um, most of that show. Um, so for me, that was incredible to see Christopher Reeve. I was like, oh, okay, okay. And when I saw what looked like a woman coming down behind him, I went, "Is that Helen Slater?" And then as soon as it revealed her, I was like, "Yes!" And I was so like loud in this theater. I mean, I almost leapt from my seat. I was so excited. I never thought in my life that I would see Helen Slater's Supergirl on a big screen. That was such like a full circle childhood favorite moment for me. Like I could have cried at that moment. Like I was so like this was so oh my gosh, this was so fulfilling for me. Um and then seeing whenever I saw the long-haired Superman and I saw the darker blue suit, I was like first I said, "Oh, long-haired Superman," because I know there were some like versions of Superman in the comics with long hair, or at least
Mm-hmm.
artistic representations. Because growing up, like I said, there were cardboard cutouts. My dad had like artwork of Superman, various Supermen with some had long hair, some were whatever. So I
Mm-hmm.
thought, oh, okay, what is this? And then even before he turned around, I was like, is that Nicolas Cage?
Yeah.
And when he turned around, I again almost leapt from my seat. I was like, oh my God, who would have ever thought that Nicolas Cage would be finally playing
Mm-hmm.
Superman on screen?
Mm-hmm.
It's like how did he keep this a secret? He must have been bouncing off the walls about
Yeah, to
this.
finally see a little bit of, what they had tried to work on 30 years ago. The
And
second I saw a Superman against a spider, I just started laughing because I knew exactly what it was. I was like, "Oh my god.
mm-hmm.
Oh my god, I can't believe they're doing this."
I lost my damn mind.
Because
I
if you don't know, you're
Yeah,
just like, "Why is
you're
Nicolas
like,
Cage
why
here?
is Nicolas Cage a Superman?
And
Yeah,
why is he
I don't think my
fighting a
mom knew, and I
spider?"
had to explain it because she's like, "What the heck is going on?" Oh,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and the just yeah, the uproarious of like clearly the crowd knew what
Mhm.
was going on. So I mean, throughout that whole scene, you heard yes, and you heard just like woo, and I mean, everybody was in on it, so it was so great. Yeah, that was incredible. Seeing Adam West
Yeah.
as Batman was incredible. I just loved it so much. It was like just such a tribute to these actors who came before that did these iconic roles and just were a part of so many people's childhoods was just like so incredible. It makes me feel emotional. I'm getting emotional right now, I'll be honest.
Well, and think
Um,
about the color
yeah.
scheme. Like the George Reeve world was black
Mm-hmm.
and white,
Black and
and it was
white.
like really
Mm-hmm.
respectful of the different eras and everything. It was like really well thought out.
Mm-hmm. And
Um,
I
so,
thought that the CGI of it looked really cool in the Chronicle. I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, that looks horrible" and whatever, but
the
I
faces
read
were rough, but everything else I thought worked for the moment. You're like traveling through space and time, you know.
right, I read that they said it's absolutely supposed to look like that. It's
Hmm.
supposed to be like you're in this, to the Flash, he's running at the speed of light. It's a watercolor world. Things are shifted. Things aren't exactly, super realistic. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, you're seeing things in kind of almost like a blur. So I thought that was really cool. I thought the representation of it showing the events of the day and the years as they were running back in time, I thought that was really neat. I'd never seen anything look like that before. I just thought it was just so creative.
Yeah.
And
I
I mean, my mind lives in that chrono ball.
I'll say I'm pretty sure the guy that kept trying to eat a hot dog throughout the movie and getting hit by the Flash is Andy Muschietti. I think he's the director of the movie.
Oh, okay.
So what did you think of The Stinger, the Twilight Zone, Shyamalan twist ending, Planet of the Apes? This is not the Batman you're looking for. What did you think when fucking George Clooney stepped out of that vehicle?
We lost it again. When it was hiding it, I was like, okay. I was like, that's not gonna be Ben Affleck. And I was like, is that gonna be Christian Bale? And then when it revealed it was George freaking Clooney, I was like, are you kidding me? I could not believe that was just such a perfect ending. It kind of made me think, I hope he doesn't go back and change it. This is cool if like this is how, because I know that they're trying to reboot the DC universe and kind of
over.
Stop with the Snyderverse. So I imagine that this movie, besides Aquaman 2, which is already wrapped production, I believe.
Aquaman 2 is looped into the James Gunn version now. So this is the reset point, is Flash.
Okay.
So they've said the Flash and Aquaman 2 start the James Gunn era, is what they've said.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just thought it was a great ending. It was, I mean, because we know that he changed a little bit with like I said before, the tomato being on a different shelf. So, I mean, that would make sense. And that changed too, and he probably changed other things. And I think it shows just the consequences of time travel. It's like, okay, sure, I put that back and my mom's dead again, but that doesn't necessarily put everything back to the way it was. He will probably never get back to the way everything was. Because he's time traveling, there's going to be consequences to that, even if he's trying to fix things.
Well, I think even different from that, which I agree with all those points, but I think the reason that the ending is so strong is because it's literally saying anything is possible. Anything is possible. So that's why it works as like a perfect end to the last era and the beginning of the new era, because we can do whatever we want. Maybe Ezra Miller will be the Flash. Maybe they won't. Maybe we'll bring back other old versions of Batman. Maybe we won't. Maybe we'll stay in this universe. Maybe we'll go to a different one. Maybe we won't. Anything we want to do, we can do. And I thought it was a great, fun stinger of an ending. Apparently there was an after credit sequence. Did you say after the credits?
Yes.
I didn't, but I read online in trivia when I was reviewing everything for this episode kind of what it was. It's my understanding he visits Aquaman and kind of explains the multiverse mayhem a little bit.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it, right?
And it's just Aquaman's drunk, and he was like, oh, so was I cool in the other universe too? And he's like, you were furry and lovable. Which that was also a great sequence, I thought, was that Aquaman's dad, when he called him in the alternate universe.
Oh my god. Are you married to a sea princess? Nope.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I thought that was so fun. But and then it was basically like Aquaman was like, get me another beer, and he was like laying face down in a puddle, and he was like, I live here, and there wasn't anything like of
significant
of substance.
Not like a Marvel, like this sets up the next thing. It's more for fun.
Yeah, it was just a little fun, like tying it all up.
That is going to do it for this episode of the Super Jersh Show. If you enjoy this podcast, remember you can watch it on youtube.com/superjersh. You can listen to the audio version on iTunes and Spotify. If you want to email the show and be a part of it with your questions, comments, or suggestions, the email address is superjershshow@gmail.com. Again, Mirrors, thanks for joining me. This was a lot of fun.
Yes. Oh, I loved this. Thank you. Thank you for agreeing to see it and doing this.
And as always, thank you for anybody who watches or listens. Until next time.